everybody, and happy Monday, and welcome to my channel. Hope everybody had a great weekend and having a great start of this week. Today we will discuss the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh, Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Pakistan, Russia, Dagestan, and the surrounding areas, and what's actually happening and how Turkey is actually headed for catastrophe. The fighting in Nagorno-Karabakh continues. There's casualties on both sides. Young men are dying fighting in the region. Stepanakert has been shot at, and Stepanakert is one of the main arteries for Armenia as far as infrastructure travel are concerned. Azerbaijan President Aliyev gave an ultimatum to Armenia as the only way they could have a dialogue, and the fire will stop if Armenia gives back the occupied lands around Nagorno-Karabakh and Nagorno-Karabakh region back to Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is being backed by Erdogan and Turkey. And also there's reports that there's Pakistan soldiers that are actually involved, and there's confirmed reports that Syrian contractors have been fighting on behalf of Azerbaijan. I did a previous video in regards to that. I'll post a link to it. Additionally, Russia obviously is not directly involved in the conflict, but apparently Russian mercenaries are in Armenia helping. Over the weekend, Iran also provided military equipment to Armenia. The reason Iran is backing Armenia is based on its own situation. Because, for example, since Turkey is backing Azerbaijan, and Erdogan has a dream of restoring Ottoman Empire, which was the bloodiest empire, he would probably form a union with Azerbaijan. So there's a lot of Azerbaijani Iranians living in Azerbaijan. If that happens, some of them might want to join the union, and that could possibly cause infighting and weakening of Iran. And additionally, there's certain lands that could be possibly taken away by Iran or would be pretty much destroyed by fighting. Historically, originally, actually, interestingly enough, a lot of those Azerbaijani areas, even before the UN recognized them as theirs, were actually part of Russia. The person who was responsible for a lot of problems and empowering Turkey too in last century was actually Lenin, and after communist revolution. I would not discuss it on this video, but I plan to do another video explaining what role actually Lenin did and communists did in the empowerment of Turkey and how those intricacies came into play. So at this point, Iran doesn't want Turk Sunnis to cause any more turmoil for Iran. Iran is positioning themselves and has been positioning in a world someone who also has developing enriched uranium, which could be made for nuclear weapons, etc. So Iran does not need those kind of issues, even though obviously it's wrong. Nobody should be having uranium enrichment, but this is not the topic of this video. So this is what's been happening as far as that side. Russia has not been directly involved, as I pointed out, but they did send mercenaries. Additionally, Turkey has been making statements, well, basically Erdogan has been making statements for Russia and friends to back off and not get involved in the discussions of that region, which obviously Russia will do, and the Kremlin will do what interests Russia. Also important to find out, the president, the leader of Dagestan, resigned this morning. Putin accepted it. Apparently, and this is unconfirmed at this point, over the weekend he was asked to choose between Azerbaijan and Armenia's side. Even though Dagestan is not a main player, it is still in the Caucasus region, and this is concerning to begin with. Clearly the leader did not want to be involved in this, but nevertheless, it's possibilities other nations can be dragged into. I did another video last week, I'll leave a link to that video as well, in regards how it possibly can affect Georgia, all this fighting, and everything else involved in Caucasus, because that's one thing about that region. One area gets lit up in the Caucasus, the whole region can get lit up. Additionally, there's also concern, and not now because Russia can control the areas, is pertaining to areas like Kyrgyzstan. Because like I said, a lot of certain Turk Sunnis, which are, Muslims, are living in Kyrgyzstan, for example. And if Azerbaijan is successful in this Turkish union, it could start happening where all these regions suddenly would want to join the Turkish union, and this is the Erdogan's dream. So Russia doesn't need whole trajectory of additional issues, even though it would not happen on this watch, but nevertheless, I think this century, that was what Erdogan is trying to do, is restore Ottoman Empire as much as possible. It's the bloodiest empire. Also, important to point out, because those regions have been within the Soviet Union for so long, and Russia, a lot of them ended up being Russified, if you can use that term. They speak Russian, even though they're of Islamic faith. They do start following and observing a lot of Russian traditions. A lot of them obviously speak Russian. They're intermarried with Slavic women. So that area changed a lot. But nevertheless, this is what Erdogan is trying to do now. And there's always been a conflict, even in the Middle East, between Sunnis and Shiites, which are always Muslim groups within the same Islamic faith, but they have their deviation. And for example, in Syria, Bashar al-Assad, he's Alawite, which is a different minority of two. So that within the Middle East, there's quite a few different factions. The main ones, obviously. I mean, there's a few other smaller ones which are not really important players, but nevertheless. Also, don't forget something else too. Also, China could start having negative experiences as well, at the point because Uyghurs, which is China's Muslim population, has been on the news a lot in regards to China forcing them into labor camps. Again, that information is not confirmed, but it seems to be that a lot of people are saying that it's true. But nevertheless, they are also of Turkish descent to a degree too. So if this is all starting happening to Caucasus and leads to Asia and everything like that, the Chinese area could be impacted, and there are a lot of other nations that could be drawn into conflict, and this is what Erdogan is trying to do. Like I said, I plan to do another video explaining all the Turkish background nations that are living in other countries, or their territories became part of other countries and how it all happened. But for the scope of this video, as I said, I'm just pointing out that. At the same time, as much as Erdogan has ambitions, his own opposition condemned him many times. They do not like how he entered Syria, Idlib region. They do not appreciate what he's doing in Azerbaijan because opposition does not think Turkey can even afford it. But nevertheless, Turkey is heading for a catastrophe, as I pointed out in the beginning of my video, and I'll explain what I mean by this. The Turkish Statistical Institute released last week a report pertaining to the nation's foreign trade. It is a government resource, and I'll leave a link to the statistical information as well. Here's one of the charts. And what is happening actually? The situation in Turkey is very dire. And yes, of course, coronavirus impacted many economies around the world, but this is not it. Turkish economy has been suffering for some time, and there was grave concern before. So at this point, Turkey has a very difficult situation. From January to August, the Turkish currency declined causing negative trade balance. And anybody can say negative trade balance is never a good thing. So really, all Russia has to do, for example, is to close the borders for tourists like it did once before when there was an issue with Turkey shooting down a Russian plane. If Russia does that again, the cities of Antalya, their economies will completely collapse. Because post-coronavirus, even though there's a second, well, I can't say post-coronavirus yet, but post the first wave, let's put it this way. Turkey and Russia opened borders, and Russian tourists are going to all-inclusive resorts. So if Russia stops that, and 90% of those tourists are from Russia, they pretty much will lose that, and the resorts would have to close. That will impact their economy severely, and Putin easily can do that, especially since now there's a second wave of coronavirus. Today, everybody went on mandatory vacation in Russian secondary schools for 2 weeks, and it's possibly going to be extended. Majority of workers are back to working at home. Actually, they're only allowed to have 30% force right now working in offices in Moscow due to the spike in numbers in coronavirus. And also, everybody knows Russia lowers the numbers a lot, so the numbers must be even more significant than they were before. But again, let's get back to Turkey. In August, their negative balance tripled. The only Turkish sector that had stable performance is the agriculture and fish, which is not much. And interestingly enough, Russia is not one of the top exporters from Turkey. Germany is number one at this point, which was actually interesting but plausible, and I can see how it's happening. At the same time, Turkish gold and foreign exchange reserves only accounted for the 83.8 billion, which is not a lot. Yes, the number sounds huge, but for the whole nation, that is not much at all. Additionally, in 8 months, Turkey experienced a soaring in negative balance by 70%. Any economist can tell you immediately that it's leading for economic collapse. When you show negative balance by 70% in 8 months, this is huge. Even with coronavirus, anything happening, and if you looking at this nation, when Erdogan is trying to go into proxy wars almost and supplying equipment and providing all this, where is the money coming from? Turkish economy will not sustain that, and eventually it will have for a full collapse, and that would mean two things. Either there's going to be a coup because opposition and others would get tired of it. Putin is already tired of Turkey, Greece is tired of Turkey, France is tired of Turkey, and Erdogan. There's so many nations right now that are bending together. The only thing that's keeping Turkey is being a member of NATO, and again, NATO is a little bit different story. It's North Atlantic Treaty Alliance, which is completely organization, which is a little completely different story to begin with. So they're not going to support their economy. So nevertheless, if this happens, and it will, because if these numbers continue by December, this is going to be a catastrophe. So instead of fighting any more economy and fights, Erdogan will have almost nothing left at that point. He'll have the defaulted collapsed nation overall. So while these motions are going, and my view of this is Erdogan is trying to amalgamate and get as far as he can right now so he can possibly make more deals, because he did make a lot of trade deals with Azerbaijan because he needs to support his economy. So really, to weaken Turkey right now, all you need to do is cut off trade, economic exports, and at this point, Erdogan will be done pretty much soon, even without having any wars, weapons, or having any type of other scenarios happening. And in reality, when countries are on the verge of economic collapse, and this is actually interesting to point out, Soviet Union almost was bankrupt by the time it collapsed in 1991 with Gorbachev. So in this case, when any nation comes close to bankruptcy, they become vulnerable. And after Soviet Union collapsed, Russia went through the dark times of at least 10 years of almost poor, a lot of starving people, no money, no jobs, high number of killings, mafia took over. There were pretty much deadly deaths every day, shootings every day. It was wild west of Russia. And if Turkey weakened to that point, Turkey will have infighting too, because Turkey has a lot of conflicts within itself too, as you pointed out, because like I said, there's a lot of opposition that are not happy with it. There's a lot of other problems that Turkey has, which are not significant. There's no civil war, factions fighting, but at the same time, many do not support the actions of Erdogan and how he's handling it and how he's positioning Turkey. So given all of that, I would love to hear everybody else's opinions. I also would like to know, what do you think what's happening in this situation, and what is your viewpoint, and what do you think the future will hold? We would always love to have a discussion. Please click like, subscribe to my channel, always welcome comments. Thank you, and I hope everybody has a great day. Thanks again.